Motorcycle Model Assembly Tips from bikesbybruce.com, a presentation of bikesbybruce.com. What follows are some tips I've used that have proven helpful when building motorcycle models. Perhaps there might be one in here that will help you with a build. Cut, trim, and paint all parts in advance. This will allow for a more like-life build during the final assembly and assure that sanding dust and other byproducts of finishing doesn't compromise the finish. The very small parts can be left on the sprue until needed, so their identifying number can easily be referenced. The box on the large-scale 1/6 Tamiya models is a great place to lay out parts if you have a dedicated workspace free of cats, kids, etc. Use old bottles for parts and paint storage. Old prescription bottles in all sizes are just a ticket to store small bolts, screws, nuts, parts, etc. They can also be useful in storing and keeping dry the very small decals such as warning labels that you pre-cut until they are ready to use. Miniature jam jars from the hotel make great airtight containers for your custom or thinned paints. Use old business cards to shim work and allow parts to dry in place. Super glue, also known as cyanoacrylate, is great stuff, but it will frost paint, chrome, or clear plastic if it is in close proximity to them while drying. I find that using an old-fashioned model glue and then letting it set overnight is the answer. Shown is a speedometer cable that has a stack of business cards set underneath to allow it to dry at just the right angle. Remove or add cards as required. What color to paint the cells in a lead-acid battery? Tamiya XF25 Light Sea Gray is a shade I have found works well to approximate the color of cells in a lead-acid battery. Just leave a few drops of this paint on a piece of tin foil to allow it to semi-dry, and then brush it on in a vertical direction with an old brush to provide lines and graininess, which will make the final product more lifelike. Then drill horizontal holes in the battery posts and glue black and red phone wire into those holes to approximate the real cabling. It's a pity that this is all hidden behind the side cover. I never glue the side covers in place so that they can be optionally left off for display purposes. Work in sub-assemblies. I find that having several items on the go during an assembly allows for a more time-efficient build. A decal can be applied to one item, then set aside, some paint added to another, and it can be set aside to dry, and then some other items can be glued together. Keep it fun and stimulating by treating the project as though it were a full-size build. I did use some personal choice on this build by using gloss, not semi-gloss black, as called for when painting the wheel accents. Use Tamiya masking tape to protect chrome pieces. Here's one example of Tamiya masking tape being used to protect a chrome cover on the top of the motor. I have found Tamiya masking tape to be fantastic for this purpose, and it never ever leaves an adhesive residue. Leave the motor side covers off until the very end. Although the instructions normally call out to have the motor side covers installed early on in the assembly, I normally leave them off until the very end. This will protect them from scratches or damage should the model tip over, and also avoid excess handling of their chrome surfaces, resulting in an errant thumbprint or worse. Protect every chrome surface with Tamiya masking tape. Here's another example of Tamiya masking tape to the rescue. This chrome part, in this case an ignition cover, is covered even before it's removed from the sprue. Always leave part of the sprue attached to all parts when initially removing. It is usually difficult to get the sprue cutter placed at the correct angle to properly cut a part off of the sprue. My answer is to use wire cutters and cut the sprue away from the part as to allow greater access to the proper angle for the final cut. Support the part well when using the wire cutter as it does not flex and distort the chrome that is on the part. Wrap duct tape around a stick to hold parts to be painted. Reverse wrap, sticky side out, some duct tape around a stick. In this case, I'm using an oblong curtain rod. Use that to hold parts that have been trimmed from the sprue, sanded, and are ready for paint. I like to load up a stick with several items that will all have the same color and then go outside for a paint. The fumes on most of these products are highly toxic and will not readily endear you to household management. Use a piece of piano wire for small paint applications. The use of a piece of piano wire, 0.018 or 0.020, can be helpful sometimes in lieu of a brush for applying paint to very small items such as the screws on the turn signal lenses. A thicker than usual consistency of the paint, such as that found underneath the cap, can also be useful in preventing bleeding down the screw head. Scan an old license plate and Photoshop it to create multiple copies for print. I scan an old license plate and edit it in Photoshop to create a nice little JPEG. Then I paste it in Microsoft Word and adjust the size accordingly. Then I copy and paste repeatedly to have some extra ones available for future builds. Print on regular paper and then seal with a clear spray using multiple very, very, very light coats to ensure that the ink does not run. Use Tamiya Clear to retain the plate. I hold the paper plate against an old business card prior to attaching and then drill out the 2 holes for the plate attachment using a Dremel and a small billet. This allows the plastic cast screws on the bracket to appear on the plate as a convincing fashion. Venerable Tamiya Clear X22 is used to attach the paper license plate to the license plate bracket by painting the bracket with an even coat and then pressing the plate gently against it. 1 coat of Tamiya Clear brushed on to protect decals. An example of Tamiya Clear X22 being used to attach a warning label on the front fork. Normally I will allow a day for the decal to set before sealing with 1 coat only. Great care is used when applying the clear with a very small brush so that the finish appears to have a border with a similar sized border as the original label. 1 coat seems to have the correct gloss and approximation of the original finish, and it will prevent the decal from drying and flaking off. Bonus: make a scan of your decal sheet. This tip is particularly helpful when either the model is discontinued or the condition of the decal sheet is questionable. Scan the decal sheet using the highest resolution possible and set it aside just in case. Perhaps a ruler added to the scan would be a good way to measure the scale. Then it's just a case of using a product like Tester's decal system to get things back on track should you need to create new decals. Another example of 1 coat of brushed on clear to protect decals. Here's another additional warning label that can be protected with Tamiya X22 Clear. Tamiya calls out the colors to be used on the instruction sheet and is wise to adhere to their choices. In this case, the inner fender is semi-gloss black while the frame is gloss black, which really emulates the flare of the full-size bike. Work in subassemblies. Another shot of the different subassemblies going together. It approximates the build of a full-size bike. The amber lenses are oriented with the tiny lettering facing down in this case so that the sprue marks left on them when they were removed from the sprue are facing down. You may wish to safety wire the center stand in the down position during assembly, since it may fold under with minimal pressure while you're working on the model and potentially risk having it fall to the floor. I use a stack of business cards under the header pipes, which are also protected with Tamiya masking tape during assembly to steady the model. The details will make or break the final result. The tank and side cover badges are one area that will really add or detract from your final result. Do the flat black first and use a couple of coats, making sure to get crisp separation between the chrome border and the flat black facing. Then work with the gloss white to bring out the lettering. Magnification of some sort combined with a student's halogen reading lamp set on bright will assist with this step. Stop to admire your work. Make sure to stop every now and then and comb over the instructions to make sure that a critical step has not been left out. One example would be the routing of a hose or cable that can be easily installed now but would be much difficult to get where it's supposed to be after the model is fully assembled. Cable routing is very important. One area that is sometimes neglected is cable routing. Use telephone wire, single strand copper, that has been stripped and placed inside the tubing to allow you to approximate lifelike bends in the cabling and hoses. Bonus: use piano wire to create mounting lugs for cables and hoses. The use of piano wire to create the attachment point for your cables and hoses will eliminate the frustration of trying to squeeze a hose onto, for example, a clutch lever and have it break. Just snap off the plastic pin and drill a small hole in the part where the pin was located. Then insert a piece of piano wire or pin into the hole that has some glue on it and orient it properly and let it dry. It's now a great time to paint the part as you have a new handle to hold your work. The use of wire cutters to trim the excess wire, and you will have an attachment point that is stronger than the original with no fuss during installation. The example shown above are spark plug caps for the NS500R prior to trimming the piano wire to length. 2 coats of Tamiya X22 clear coat over all trim decals. This step is critical to ensure that the decals do not move or bubble up when the final clear coat goes on. I applied 3 coats of Tamiya black metal flake and then put the trim decals on. After letting them dry for 1 day, I brushed on 2 light coats of Tamiya Clear X22 onto just the decals, allowing at least 6 hours of drying time in between. Then I applied 3 coats of clear with a soft brush under bright lights to check consistency. I found as few strokes as possible to avoid entrailing air bubbles, and always work horizontally in relation to the work was the way to go. Bare metal foil on headlight brackets and radiator trim. The use of bright chrome from the bare metal foil collection in lieu of silver paint really makes the trim on the radiator guards and headlight bracket collars pop. Orient the seam on the headlight bracket so that it is facing the headstock, and it won't appear unless anybody is using a dental mirror. I hope you've enjoyed these tips, and thanks for watching. Oh, and don't forget, the full-size models can be just as fun to build.